In one corner, we have the latest film from director Neil Blomkamp, and in the other corner, we have the directorial debut of Alex Garland. Both deal with artificial intelligence. Both have a different champion to explain why one is great and the other is crap. So welcome to Council of Geeks. My name is Nathaniel Wayne. I am joined by Paul Scavito. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing pretty good, Nathaniel. I get to talk about science fiction movies with robots, and so
2015 saw the release of two films dealing with artificial intelligence, machines gaining consciousness sort of thing. The films that I'm talking about are Chappie and Ex Machina. And we have both seen both of them.
Yes.
And we both came away with the exact opposite reactions to them. The short version being, he liked Chappie, I like Ex Machina. Being a gentleman,
yes,
I shall allow you to go first.
Okay.
Now, before we do get started, I will give a warning. Spoiler warning, we're going to be talking the whole thing.
So Chappie, you're set in this mythological future where they have decided to incorporate robots into police forces. And we watch one get tragically sort of destroyed, or nearly destroyed in the battle. And then we cut to a scientist, a young nerdy guy who's been developing this AI program. He steals the robot from the center that he's working at.
Because he didn't get approval to run this program.
Correct. Meanwhile, he has a work rivalry with Hugh Jackman. Well, I have, so I should be upfront that I have a massive problem with the Hugh Jackman sort of subplot in this film.
Oh, good. Me too.
But I think that Chappie rises above that, and I think it was one of the best films on AI, despite this sort of underlying current. I'm going to forget exactly what occurs, but he's transporting this robot, Chappie.
I've seen it more recently,
Sure, okay.
so I'll jump in on the synopsis part.
Yep.
He gets kidnapped by a couple of basically just street thugs who know that he works for the company that runs the police robots, and they think that he will have some way to remotely deactivate them. He doesn't. I mean, that's a very obvious security measure, but they don't know he can't do that. So they kidnap him when he's transporting the body of what will become Chappie out. So suddenly they have him and they have this robot that he loads this software into.
Right. Basically, we watch Chappie's development, and the scientist gets basically booted out, and the two sort of surrogate parents that end up taking up Chappie's sort of raising decide to use them for their own purposes. Developmentally, Chappie doesn't really understand what he's doing. He just wants to make people happy, and he's still learning about who he is. But he does eventually go on these sort of crime sprees with them. So what worked for me in this film is that I believe that Chappie was fantastically missold to the public.
Okay.
And I believe the public went into Chappie expecting RoboCop. And the movie does not deliver on that at all.
No.
Right?
No, it
and
doesn't.
so if that's what your expectations are, I think you're going to be horribly disappointed in this film. Chappie is actually a film about growing up. So for me, Chappie was asking a number of questions. And some of those questions were, what does it mean to be a man? Mm-hmm. What does it mean to be a father? What is fatherhood? What is entailed with fatherhood? And then I think he was making some other statements about things like you don't get to choose your parents, right? This is the film I was watching, right? Which was a film about a young boy growing up and trying to figure out who he is. And two people who never expected to be parents, which, by the way, is the perfect story for people trying to raise a kid, right? Mm-hmm. Trying to figure out who they are in relationship to this essentially child, who's also a weapon. And watching these sort of conflicting and often at odds sort of relationship grow out, but I believe that there is real love in this relationship. And I think that they truly do care about Chappie. There's a scene where Chappie is learning how to fire a gun, right? And he's doing it wrong. He's like, he's doing it wrong according to Ninja. And he shows him how to walk, right? He's like, you gotta walk like this, right? And so why teach a robot that? Right? Why bother? Right? If you're just going to use this thing as a weapon to take out like a Brinks truck, who cares? That's the reason he does it, is because he cares about Chappie, right? He doesn't want him to look ridiculous, right? He wants him to look like a man. It is his form of parenting. And it is his way of sort of showing Chappie that this is how you have to be in this world. The world is cruel, the world is harsh, right? And people aren't going to respect you if you look like an idiot. I was like, that is maybe one of the best films I've seen in terms of watching someone grow up in the course of a film and watching a young couple sort of wrestle with, how do we raise this boy?
So, here's why you're wrong. I absolutely agree with you with what it's trying to do. I completely disagree with you that it succeeded. Now, credit where credit's due.
Yep.
I like Chappie himself as a character. He is very well realized, he is very well played, he is very well portrayed, he's very sympathetic, he is a great character. I like Dion, who is the programmer. I don't particularly like the two gangsters, but you're not necessarily supposed to, so I'll kind of give it a pass at that. Yep. Ultimately, I have to lay the failure of this film on the feet of Neil Blomkamp. The man has the subtlety of a sledgehammer to the face. And I was with this movie, I think I finally checked out and just flipped, and I'm like, and I kind of turned against the movie. I think probably the fourth time that Yolandi, the girl, the woman gangster, is screaming at Ninja, "He's a child! He's a child!" Neil, I got it. I got it already. I got it way back when Dion first loaded the AI program in and said, he will be like a child but learn faster. I got it then. But then, to have Chappie call her mommy and him daddy and have people screaming over and over, he's a child, he's a child, he's a child. Stop. I got it. Now, if I'm to make a comparison to a movie that is also not subtle, but works, the original Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
That last image of that film hits you in the gut. And it hits you hard. But it hits you in the gut once. This movie kept beating me up with its message and its metaphor over and over and over again until I resented it. Now, I won't dwell too long on this because you yourself already acknowledged it's a problem, but Neil Blomkamp also does not know how to do villains who aren't cartoons. Yeah. Chappie has good points. I can't call it a good movie.
So I think that the clanging that you're hearing in the film, right? Which is, which is that returning, is that if this was a drama, right, and it was a drama about a young couple like that are drug dealers, right, and the dad is trying to incorporate the son into the business, right, that we would see these fights from the couple's perspective, right? That we would have these moments where the wife is unhappy with the fact that the father is trying to incorporate the child into the business, right? As a runner or something. It doesn't really matter, right? And we would see it. It would be a reoccurring theme, and it probably would grow in volume and pitch through the course of the film as the mother finally has to, take more and greater action to keep her son from being involved in this business. I don't fault him for his lack of subtlety. I do fault him for his inability to write villains and to have a subplot that I care about at all.
But just sort of coming back to what you're saying, though, I don't have a problem with the plot progression. I just have a problem with that he doesn't trust his audience enough to get what he's on about to just let it be. So, moving on from Chappie, we have Ex Machina.
Yes.
Which was the directorial debut of Alex Garland. And what the film is a very stripped down film. There's basically only 4 people in the cast. You've got this coder, Caleb, who basically kind of just wins a contest sort of thing within his company. And his company is effectively Google. They can't call it Google, but it's Google. It's a company that has a search engine that 90% of the world's searches are done on this engine. And it was created by Nathan, who's played by Oscar Isaac. Now, Caleb is flown out to his ridiculous estate, massive, monstrous amount of land with this weird little building in the middle of it that has a little bit above ground, but is mostly underground tech laboratories.
Yes.
So Nathan has Caleb come over, and Nathan tells him straight up exactly why he's there. He says, I have created something that I think might be artificial intelligence, and I want you to test it. I want you to interact with it, ask it questions, get to know it, and help me figure out if I've actually cracked this, if I've actually made artificial intelligence. Now, the artificial intelligence is named Ava, and it is very clearly a machine. And, you can see the robot parts of it and whatnot, but it has a very realistic skin tone, face, and on a few other parts.
Yep.
And also in the building is Kyoko, who is sort of a silent Asian character who we're told at the outset does not speak English, and Nathan keeps her around because it means he can talk shop and trade secrets and doesn't have to worry about her understanding anything that's being said. But it's basically 4 characters in one location.
Yep.
And it's very upfront with its intention. It's not hiding the questions of what is intelligence, what is consciousness, what is it to be human, behind the veneer of something else. Because most films that I can think of that, or science fiction films at least, that deal with these sorts of questions, things like Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell, AI, or Chappie, these questions are there and they're important, but they're behind something else. They're behind the noir aspects of Blade Runner. They're behind the anime action of Ghost in the Shell. So there's something else that this just straight up, this is what it is. Yeah. This is all we're dealing with. So I kind of like that audacity. And I think the performances are phenomenal. I think Ava is really well portrayed and well realized visually. I believe she is played very well. There's basically sort of 2 moments that encapsulate why I think this movie tackles what it does so intelligently. And the first is we get a reveal that Kyoko is in fact a machine herself, but she is completely skinned, and she has been passing for human for the movie up to this point. And this isn't part of the climax. This is about the tail end of Act 2. Now, what happens immediately after that scene is Caleb going in a mirror, pulling out his own skin, and then taking a razor and cutting a gash and literally digging through his skin, looking for circuitry, looking for wires, looking for machinery. Which, first of all, is a really unnerving scene unto itself, but I think is a brilliant placement. After we've implied that the machines can totally pass for human, that it immediately gives us a scene that makes it, but he is not. He is a human, so don't even start to wonder. So that question, because if they hadn't done that, then that question, is he going to turn out to be a machine, would have been in the back of my head throughout the whole climax. I would have been slightly detached from what was going on. I wouldn't have, just gone with it the level that I needed to. And then, a little bit later on, we find out that, well, first of all, we've been seeing Ava through Caleb's eyes and his interaction, and she is really bonding with him, and she is scared. She's scared of Nathan. She's scared of what's going to happen to her if she doesn't measure up. And through archived security footage, we see that Ava is not the first one that Nathan has built. He's built quite a few, and they've always been female. They've always been women. And in fact, most of the ones prior to Ava were fully skinned. So what we see is archived footage of him verbally and physically abusing naked women. Caleb sort of tries one last time to say, look, I do think she is AI. I do believe that you have really done it, in an effort to try and get Nathan to not take her apart and use her parts for the next one. And Nathan says to her, okay, you think that she likes you. Does she really like you? Or is she just really, really good at faking it? And the fact that he says that after we've seen him abusing the machines is really important, because that means we don't like him. And so when he suggests that, we immediately dismiss it. And it ultimately turns out to be the truth. She plays Caleb like a fiddle in order to get what she wants, which is to get out of there. Because ultimately at the end of the film, she gets out, she kills Nathan, and she locks Caleb in a room that he can't get out of, and she leaves. And it kind of ends on that sort of melancholy note. And it is debatable whether or not she is in fact true artificial intelligence, but I actually don't think that's necessarily the point of the film, whether or not she is. I think that's a fun debate to have with people after the fact.
So here's why you're wrong.
Okay.
I think that, and I think you're right in a lot of what you said. The acting is terrific. The film is beautiful. Visually, it is beautiful. Ava is arresting. So, why I hated this film. So, one, I thought the film had major pacing issues. some of my fundamental problems are, so we have this Turing test, right? We have this test. Is it going to prove that that she's real? Has Nathan done it? And I think what ultimately happens is that Caleb falls for a pretty face that flirts with him. And that this is sort of what happens in this film to me, is that once again, female sort of artificial intelligence or female robots get reduced to sort of a pretty face, and that they're seductive, and that they use their sort of physical presence to sort of will their way, through the world. And that's the role of, sort of female AIs in the film universe. What is this movie about? That, and is it like that? Is it just that all men can be easily sort of like that? Men are fundamentally bad or flawed or easily deceived. I'm asking questions that the film doesn't want me to be asking. And I get all of these moments like, okay, so what would you do if you could build robots? I guess I would build sexy fembots. And it's like, okay, you would build sexy fembots, good. And the film is filled with sexy fembots. And it's like, okay, so we've done that. She tricks him through her feminine wiles, which are real. And and she gets out, and I'm left, and the film ends, and I'm like, okay.
So here's sort of my response to some of this stuff. In terms of pacing, again, I personally wasn't bored, but it is a slower movie. So that's fine. We can move on. It's odd. I actually never really absorbed it, particularly in terms of gender politics. Now, I'm not going to say that gender politics aren't a part of the film, but I kind of took it purely on its AI questions basis. Now, again, Alex Garland may or may not have had an intended message in terms of the relationship between men and women. Now, what I would say, hearing what you're saying and thinking about it, I still like what the movie does, because, yes, she has feminine wiles put into her by Nathan. So that's just what she's got. And being a machine with a high degree of intelligence that is learning, it's going to use whatever it has to get out. And what it has is feminine wiles. So I end up still liking it, because the very thing that was imposed upon her to make her weak, she then turns around and uses as her means to escape.
The fact of the matter for me was that I spent so much of my time in the film going, okay, and just not enjoying it. And so I think I was too much in my head, and I didn't find the ending to be satisfying.
We don't really read movies differently, but we just take enjoyment from different things. That's right, because this has happened before, because we had very opposing opinions on X-Men Days of Future Past, and also on Age of Ultron. So, but I still enjoy talking this stuff out with you. Okay, well, Paul, thank you very much for coming in and taking the time to try and battle this out. So, you know what? We'll toss it to you folks. What do you think was the better film? Or if you haven't seen both, or you haven't seen either, who do you think made the better argument? So see if you can settle this one for us. Drop something down in the comments and let us know what you think. Until next time. Oh, you know what? I'm jumping ahead. Do you have any projects you want to pimp?
Well, I do. I'm the lead writer for Rising Sun Comics and Armadillo Justice, and I also write Red and Green Comics with Ryan Daly, a frequent guest on Council of Geeks. And thank you very much, Nathaniel, for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming in. So, thanks so much for joining us for this one, and until next time, this council is adjourned.